Welcome, everyone. It's Friday, Erev Shabbos, and we're going to do an interesting Rashi today, which has a practical ramification, which Rabbi Shadno was just talking about bringing things to the table. We're going to look at a Rashi in the sixth Aliyah. In the previous Aliyah yesterday, which we didn't really cover, we learned about the complaints of the Jewish people. They complain about the food, they complain about the water, all kinds of things that are going wrong in this parsha. And then in the sixth Aliyah, we're told a little bit about a little bit more, I should say, even than it's revealed in the previous Aliyah, about both the Slav and the Man, two forms of food that are going to be coming to them at this time. So Hashem says to Moshe, Shamati es tlunos b'nei Israel, I've heard their complaints, maybe they're even legitimate complaints. Now, daber alehem lemor, tell them, saying, Bein ha'arbayim tochlu basar, uvaboker tisbu lachem. In the evening, you're going to be able to eat meat. I'm going to give you meat to eat. And in the morning, you're going to be satiated with bread. And because of those two miracles, I provide you with food along your travels in the desert. V'yidatem ki ani Hashem Elokechem. You will know that I am the true God that can be able to provide these things for you, the God that you rely on, the God that you trust. How exactly is that going to transpire? Vahi ba'erev vatal haslav vatachas samachaneh. So in the evening, the Slav, these birds are going to come up, vatal, and they're going to cover over the machaneh. They're going to cover the camp. That's what happens in the evening. Uva boker haita shichvas hatal saviv lamachaneh. And in the morning, the shichvas tal, the layer of dew, is going to be around the machaneh. Vatal shichvas hatal v'hinei al pnei hamidbar dak mechuspas dachich for al haaretz. And then eventually that layer of dew is going to rise, meaning it's going to be dissipated, it's going to evaporate as the sun comes up, and what's going to be revealed under it is the man. Vayiru b'nei Israel, they're going to see what's underneath. Vayomru yishalachiv manhu, and they're going to say to their friend, their neighbor, their brother, manhu, it's man, right? So that's the process that's going to occur for the man. There's many differences between the Slav and the man. It's a whole study. It's a fascinating Rav Hirsch about why each of these things were given to the Jewish people and the differences in terms of the way Hashem gives it and the reaction of Bnei Israel. It's a whole study for another time. But for now, a fascinating Rashi. Rashi says over here, the Pasuk tells us that there will be a shichvas tal saviv lamachaneh. There's going to be a layer of dew around the machaneh, which covers over the man and then is evaporated in the morning, revealing the man beneath the shichvas tal. He says, however, there's a problem. Here it tells us that the tal, the dew, is going to be shochev al haman. It's above the man, on top of the man. Ubemakom acher hu omer, but elsewhere in the Torah, it says, in Parshas Bahaloscha, we click it over here, you'll see it says, uberedes hatal. Whoops, sorry. Here it says in Parshas Bahaloscha, uberedes hatal al hamachane laila, Yered Haman alav. Here it says that the tal is going to fall in the night, and in the morning when the man comes, it's going to come on top of the tal. So in our parsha, it says the tal is on top of the man. The dew is on top of the man, covering over it. But in Parshas Baaloscha, it says the tal, the dew fell first, and the man fell on top of it. So which one is it? Rashi says it's both. Hatal yored al haaretz, v'haman yored alav, v'chozer v'yored tal alav, v'harehu kemunach bekufsa. What we see is that there are two pieces to the process. First, during the night, the dew falls on the ground, makes a nice clean layer for the man to then fall on top of. So it sits nicely on a clean, level ground that's cleaned by the tal, that's protected by the tal. And then after the man falls, another layer of tal comes and covers over the man to protect it on top until the sun comes, the morning comes, and it dissipates, and the man is now revealed underneath it. So we take the pasuk here in Beshalach and the pasuk in Baloscha, we put them together, we gain the complete story of the relationship between the dew and the man, which ends up being kemunach bekufsa. It's as if the man is surrounded on both sides, like in a box, a protective box of dew, a protective box of tal. It's a very beautiful image about the care and concern with which God gives the man to the Jewish people. Again, as I said, in contrast to the Slav, much to say about that, but it's a beautiful image about the care and concern God has for the Jewish people and the way he feeds them, not just throwing the food in their face, but really taking care of it, protecting it on the bottom, protecting it on the top. Many of the pieces of our parsha surrounding the man actually have practical halachic ramifications. Many of the halachos of our sudos on Shabbos, our meals on Shabbos, are learned out from this parsha, including the obligation of 3 meals on Shabbos, etc., and the obligation of lechem mishnah, etc. One of the other things that's learned here is our practice in terms of covering the challah. The Gemara in Pesachim talks about pores mapa umakadesh, that in the times of the Gemara, Tosfos explains over here, they used to only bring the shulchan, they only brought the table with the food over to the person after they had already made kiddush, after kiddush was over. But in our time, our tables are very heavy, our tables are different, and therefore all of our food is on the table while we're making kiddush, which ends up being problematic. And therefore Tosfos says, Achshav shulchan shalahem gedolim yoser midai, it's too hard to move them. Kasher laviyam achara kiddush, shelo lahavsik bein kach, bein kiddush l'seuda. If you took so much time to bring the heavy tables over afterwards, it would be actually a hefsek, an interruption between the kiddush and the suda, which would not be good. Therefore, what do we do instead? Anu regilim lifros mapa ulakadesh. We throw a tablecloth or a cover over the food, in this case, really over the bread, and then make kiddush. And that's indeed what I'm sure all of you on this call do. You cover over your challah on top. V'atam mefurish b'sheiltos. The reason for this is explicit in the sheiltos. Multiple reasons are given. We're most familiar with the reason given in the Talmud Yerushalmi. Shelo yireh lechem bushaso. We don't want to embarrass the bread. Really, the bread, back to Rabbi Shadno's point, should be the bracha that comes first, before the wine. The fact that we're making the bracha of the wine first in order to be yotze, our kiddush, could be embarrassing to the bread. Therefore, we cover over the bread as if it's not there. No problem of kadima, no problem of hierarchy in brachos. You make your kiddush first and then your hamotzi. That's the classic explanation given. However, Tosfos here in the Gemara in Pesachim cites another reason. Yesh mefarish zecher leman. Maybe the reason why we cover the challah is as a remembrance to the man. Shelo haya yored b'shabbasos v'yom tov, v'haya tal milamala u'milamata v'haman beintayim, because there was dew on top and dew on the bottom and the man in the middle. Now, this reason which Tosfos gives for the covering of the challah is fascinating, because it explains one of our practices that would go unexplained by the reason of the Talmud Yerushalmi. According to the Talmud Yerushalmi, the only thing you would need to do to the challah on Shabbos is to cover it on the top, because you don't want it to be exposed when you're making kiddush. But we do two things. We cover it on the bottom and on the top. We always have a plate or a board or a cloth or something underneath the challah, and we cover it on top. And that's why Tosfos' explanation is so important. He says that explains why we do the top and the bottom, because it's not only to prevent the bread from being embarrassed, it's also to remember the way the man used to fall and be protected for them to be eaten on Shabbos. No man fell on Shabbos, but the man fell beforehand and was protected on the top and the bottom by a layer of dew. We mimic that. We remember that at our Shabbos table by covering the challah not just on top, but on the bottom as well. Munach b'kufsa. And if you look in Shulchan Aruch, the way it's quoted, it's not just cited by the Shulchan Aruch to cover the challah on top, it's specifically cited to cover it on the bottom and the top, to create this enclosure around the challah. And although the Shulchan Aruch doesn't explicitly mention the reason of the Tosfos over here in Pesachim, it seems to be clear that that's the reason for it. Otherwise, the Shulchan Aruch would have only said that you cover it on top. So tonight, when you cover your challah, pay attention to the fact that you're not just covering on the top, but your challah board or your cutting board or your plate is covering on the bottom as well, remembering the great miracle of the man, not just that God fed the Jewish people, but God even protected the food of the Jewish people, making sure it was clean and appropriate and holy and sanctified for them to be able to enjoy it. I wish you all a great Shabbos ahead.